As weeks passed, their secret plans grew more concrete. Liang Chen began to consider rings more seriously, imagining the band that would symbolize their love. Wei Lun, meanwhile, perfected his cake design, envisioning how he might present it as part of his proposal. Neither knew that the other was preparing, but both felt the weight of anticipation, the quiet urgency of love moving toward forever. Their love, once tentative, had become undeniable. They had faced doubts, pressures, and uncertainties, but they had endured. They had built a life together, a rhythm of intimacy and resilience. And now they were ready to take the next step. The stage was set. The proposal was no longer just an idea. It was a future waiting to be spoken, a vow waiting to be made, a promise waiting to be sealed. And though neither of them knew exactly when or how, they both knew one thing for certain. The moment was coming. Soon, they would ask each other for forever. The night was quiet, the city lights shimmering beyond their balcony. Liang Chen had carried the ring in his pocket for days, waiting for the right moment. He had rehearsed the words countless times, discarding them, rewriting them, searching for simplicity. Tonight felt different. Tonight felt right. Wei Lun sat beside him, sipping tea, his expression calm. Liang Chen looked at him, his chest tightening. He thought of everything they had endured, the exhaustion of his career, the struggles of the cafe, the doubts of their families, the quiet resilience that had carried them through. He realized that love wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence, about choosing each other again and again. He reached into his pocket, his hand trembling slightly, and pulled out the small box. Wei Lun's eyes widened as he opened it, revealing the simple band inside. Wei Lun, Liang Chen said softly, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. I don't have grand words, but I have this. I love you. I choose you. I want forever with you. Will you marry me? For a moment, silence hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Wei Lun's eyes filled with tears, his hand covering his mouth. Then he laughed softly, shaking his head in disbelief. You beat me to it, he whispered. Liang Chen frowned, confused. What do you mean? Wei Lun stood, walked to the kitchen, and returned with a small cake box. He opened it, revealing a delicate creation, a layered cake decorated with candied orange peel and oolong glaze, their signature flavors. On top, written in careful script, were the words, "Forever?" I was going to ask you tonight, Wei Lun admitted, his voice trembling. I've been planning for weeks. I wanted to give you this, to say the same thing. I love you. I choose you. I want forever with you. Liang Chen stared at the cake, then at Wei Lun, his chest tightening with overwhelming emotion. He laughed, tears stinging his eyes. So, we were both waiting for the right moment. Wei Lun nodded, smiling through his tears. And it turns out the right moment was the same one. They embraced, holding each other tightly, the weight of their journey pressing against them. It wasn't grand or extravagant. It was quiet, intimate, perfect. 2 men, 2 proposals, 1 answer. Yes, Wei Lun whispered against Liang Chen's shoulder. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, Liang Chen replied, his voice steady. Yes, I'll marry you. The words carried the weight of vows, of promises, of forever. They sat together, laughing and crying, sharing the cake, slipping the ring onto Wei Lun's finger. The moment was simple, but it carried the weight of everything they had endured, everything they had built, everything they were choosing. Later that night, as they lay together, Liang Chen whispered, "Timing really is everything." Wei Lun smiled, his eyes closing. And ours was perfect. The morning after their double proposal, the world felt different. The ring on Wei Lun's finger glimmered softly in the light, and the memory of the cake with forever, written across it, lingered in their minds. They had both asked, both answered, both promised. Now came the next step, sharing the news. Liang Chen suggested they start with family. My parents need to hear it from me directly, he said, his voice steady but tinged with nerves. They've struggled with this, but I want them to know how certain I am. Wei Lun nodded, squeezing his hand. And mine will be thrilled. They've always wanted me to find someone who makes me happy. That weekend, they traveled to Kaohsiung to visit Liang Chen's parents. The atmosphere was tense at first, his mother fussing over the meal, his father quiet. After dinner, Liang Chen cleared his throat. I have something to tell you. Wei Lun and I were engaged. Silence followed, heavy and uncertain. His mother's eyes widened, his father's brow furrowed. For a moment, Liang Chen feared rejection. But then his mother spoke softly. You look happy. Happier than I've seen you in years. His father sighed, his expression softening. We may not understand everything, but if he makes you happy, then that's enough. Relief washed over Liang Chen. He realized that acceptance didn't have to be perfect, it just had to be real. Wei Lun's family, by contrast, welcomed the news with joy. His mother hugged him tightly, tears in her eyes. I knew you'd find someone who sees you, she said. His sister teased him, asking about wedding plans, while his father simply smiled, proud of the man his son had become. With families informed, they turned to friends. The cafe became the center of celebration, customers congratulating them, friends dropping by with flowers and small gifts. The atmosphere was warm, filled with laughter and joy. One evening, as they sat together in the cafe after closing, Wei Lun spoke softly. I never imagined this place would witness so much of our story. From the first time you walked in to now, it feels like home. Liang Chen smiled, his eyes warm. Because it is. It's where we began, and it's where we'll keep building. They began to discuss wedding plans, though cautiously. Neither wanted extravagance. Both wanted intimacy. Something simple, Wei Lun said. Just us, our families, our closest friends. Nothing grand, just love. Liang Chen agreed. A ceremony that feels like us. Honest, quiet, meaningful. They talked about venues. Perhaps the riverside where they had shared countless walks, perhaps the cafe itself, transformed for a day into a place of vows. They discussed food, music, even attire, laughing at the thought of Liang Chen in something less formal than his usual suits. Planning wasn't without challenges. Families had opinions, friends offered suggestions, logistics loomed. But each time stress threatened, they reminded themselves of what mattered, the promise they had made, the love they were celebrating. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, Liang Chen spoke softly. Do you ever think about how far we've come? From exhaustion and loneliness to this. Wei Lun leaned against him, smiling. I do. And I think about how much further we'll go. The moment was quiet, but it carried the weight of promise. They both knew that their wedding was not just an event. It was a continuation of their journey, a celebration of resilience, of timing, of love. And though challenges remained, family expectations, financial strain, career demands, they knew one thing for certain. They were building a future together, step by step, moment by moment, vow by vow. The weeks after their engagement were filled with anticipation. The ring on Wei Lun's finger and the memory of the cake with forever, written across it, had transformed their daily routines into something brighter, more purposeful. Every conversation seemed to circle back to the wedding, not in a frantic way, but in the gentle rhythm of two people building a future together. They began with the basics: venue, guest list, food. Both agreed that extravagance wasn't their style. I don't want chandeliers or ballrooms, Wei Lun said one evening as they sat in the cafe sketching ideas. I want something intimate, something that feels like us. Liang Chen nodded. Then let's keep it simple. The cafe, maybe? It's where we began. Or the riverside, where we've walked so many nights. They weighed the options, eventually settling on the riverside. It was open, natural, and symbolic, the place where they had spoken of forever, where they had shared countless quiet moments. The idea of exchanging vows with the city lights shimmering on the water felt perfect. Planning wasn't without challenges. Families had opinions, friends offered suggestions, logistics loomed. Liang Chen's parents wanted tradition, Wei Lun's family wanted celebration, and friends teased them about attire and music. But each time stress threatened, they reminded themselves of what mattered, the promise they had made, the love they were celebrating. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, Liang Chen spoke softly. Do you ever think about how far we've come? From exhaustion and loneliness to this. Wei Lun leaned against him, smiling. I do. And I think about how much further we'll go. The weeks passed quickly, filled with preparations. Wei Lun poured his creativity into the wedding cake, designing something that reflected their journey, layers for resilience, flavors for joy, decorations for timing. Liang Chen, though less artistic, contributed in his own way, organizing logistics, ensuring that everything ran smoothly. The day of the wedding arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. The riverside was transformed with simple decorations, flowers, lanterns, chairs arranged in a semicircle. Friends and family gathered, their faces filled with warmth and anticipation. Wei Lun stood at the edge of the river, his suit simple but elegant, his eyes shining. Liang Chen approached, his heart pounding, his own suit crisp but softened by the smile on his face. The ceremony was quiet, intimate, perfect. They exchanged vows that carried the weight of their journey. I choose you, Liang Chen said softly, his voice steady. Through exhaustion, through doubt, through joy. I choose you, again and again forever. Wei Lun's eyes filled with tears. I choose you, he replied. Through dreams, through struggles, through love. I choose you, again and again forever. They slipped rings onto each other's fingers, sealing the promise. The crowd erupted in applause, but for them, the world had narrowed to just two people, two vows, two hearts choosing forever. The reception was filled with laughter, with food, with joy. Wei Lun's cake was unveiled, its layers a testament to their journey, its flavors a reflection of their love. Guests marveled, but for Liang Chen, the cake was more than dessert. It was a symbol, a reminder of the proposal, of the promise, of the love that had carried them here. As the evening drew to a close, they stood together by the river, the city lights shimmering on the water. Liang Chen whispered, timing really is everything. Wei Lun smiled, his eyes closing as he leaned against him. And ours was perfect. The moment was quiet, but it carried the weight of forever. They had faced doubts, pressures, and uncertainties, but they had endured. They had built a life together, a rhythm of intimacy and resilience. And now, they had sealed it with vows, with rings, with promises. Their journey was not over. It was just beginning. But they knew one thing for certain. They were in this together, step by step, moment by moment, forever. Marriage did not change everything overnight, but it gave their lives a new rhythm, a new foundation. The vows they had exchanged by the riverside lingered in their hearts, shaping the way they approached each day. They were no longer just partners. They were husbands, bound not only by love but by promise. Their mornings began with quiet rituals. Liang Chen brewed coffee while Wei Lun prepared breakfast, often experimenting with pastries that filled the apartment with warmth. They would sit together, sharing food and conversation before the day pulled them in different directions. Evenings were spent reconnecting, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with silence, always with presence. The cafe, buoyed by the publicity from their engagement and wedding, began to thrive. Customers came not only for the pastries but for the story, the lawyer and the baker who had found love, who had chosen each other against the odds. Wei Lun embraced the growth, expanding his menu, hiring staff, and dreaming of opening a second location. Liang Chen, meanwhile, found new balance in his career. Turning down the promotion had been difficult, but it allowed him to carve out space for his personal life. He discovered that success was not just about climbing higher, it was about finding joy, about choosing presence, about building a life that mattered. Yet married life was not without challenges. The demands of the cafe sometimes left Wei Lun exhausted, while Liang Chen's cases occasionally consumed his evenings. There were arguments about time, about priorities, about the balance between work and home. But each conflict was followed by reconciliation, by the quiet acknowledgement that love meant persistence, meant choosing each other even when it was hard. One evening, after a particularly tense week, they sat together on the balcony, the city lights shimmering beyond. Do you ever worry we'll lose this? Liang Chen asked softly. Wei Lun leaned against him, his voice steady.
No.
Because we keep choosing it. That's what matters. The reassurance eased Liang Chen's doubts. He realized that marriage wasn't about perfection. It was about resilience, about persistence, about choosing each other again and again.